Hello, greetings, and welcome to this episode of Film Frauds, a podcast where three fellas with limited or no experience in filmmaking, very little idea about the actual craft of filmmaking, but who just love movies, watching them, and talking about movies, get together and try to view and analyze and review some of the most important films of our time, and hopefully in the process learn a little bit about cinema and filmmaking while having some infotaining discussions.
That's good.
Yeah, so we're going to be focusing mostly on the Criterion collection of films. If you want to know, if this is your first time joining us and you want to know a little bit more about our goals and the Criterion collection, take a listen to our first episode where we discuss The Rock and have a lot of fun, and Chad goes over the Criterion collection in that episode. But speaking of Chad, I'm joined here in the Fraud Den by my two co-conspirators, Chad.
Hello.
And Jacob.
Hey, guys.
And so we'll just go ahead and kind of launch in. It's been a little while since we recorded, so what's going on? Yeah, definitely. So what's going on with you guys? You seen any good movies lately?
Well, I finished probably my fifth or sixth rewatch of The Sopranos.
Wow.
I love that show. I have to place it at number one of TV shows for me. I'd say if there's a Criterion collection for TV, it would definitely be in it, I would say.
Yeah.
I just love it so much. It's such a multi-layered show. There's so much going on in so many different layers. Like, you got your top layer of, like, you know, the lizard reptile brain where you just love whack-ins, you love TNA, you love watching the mafia and people committing crimes. And then there's so much going on underneath it where it's like this whole ethereal level. I just love it, and I don't know. There's so much to it. I could just rewatch it. It's probably the most rewatchable show I've ever seen.
5 or 6 viewings is pretty wild.
And
How many seasons are there?
There's 6. So each season has like 13 episodes.
Yeah.
The 6th season has 18.
Wow.
So they kind of... Actually, it's 20. I'm sorry, not 18. 20. So they kind of packed a whole lot in the last season.
Yeah.
Awesome show. I mean, what's his face?
Gandolfini?
Gandolfini. James Gandolfini, rest in peace. He was just absolutely brilliant in it. So was Edie Falco. Some of the best TV acting I've ever seen.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters ever is Tony Soprano. He's such a distinct and multi-layered character, just like the show.
Yeah.
So recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. I would imagine that most people have seen The Sopranos by now.
Unless you're a TV fraud like me.
Right.
And I've never seen The Sopranos.
There's a lot.
I keep meaning to go in and watch it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of bad TV out there, and I mean, it's like an investment if you get caught up in a bad TV show, like The Walking Dead or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Did you ever watch The Sopranos?
I've seen some of it. It's really weird. Like, nowadays, people, they're completionists. You can watch everything streaming, and you can watch it in order. For whatever reason, when The Sopranos first came on TV, that was right at the same time I was moving out of the house when I was in college. Uh-huh. And we were, in college just too poor to have HBO. So I never got to see a lot of the early episodes. It was a show that I always just caught kind of randomly if I was at someone's house who had HBO.
Yeah. So Matthew Weiner created The Sopranos, is that right?
David Chase. Matthew Weiner did Mad Men.
Okay. For some reason I thought he was involved in Sopranos.
Maybe
he was a writer or something.
Maybe, but David Chase was the head honcho there.
Mm-hmm. That was the only connection I could think of I could make, is I've seen Mad Men. But I guess maybe he was a writer or something on it.
Yeah, and Alan Taylor, I think it was Alan Taylor or Terrence Winter. They went on to do Boardwalk Empire, and that was not very good. In my opinion.
I gave up on that one.
Yeah, I gave it 3 seasons. A solid 3 seasons I gave it, and I just couldn't watch it anymore.
Yeah. And then the other Sopranos that I've seen is the Fred Flintstone episode of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. Did you guys catch that?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's worth watching just for that awesome opening credits sequence where they do the Sopranos rules.
Yeah. And they hang out at the Dabadoo Club, if I remember.
Yeah.
The Dabadoo Club.
I love that show.
But hey.
I don't know when this episode's going to go live and anyone out there will be listening, but we just passed Halloween, so I went to a movie theater in Charlotte called the Airsley Grand Cinema. Every year they do this really awesome retro horror movie series where they show a different kind of horror movie double feature where it's $5, and they have 2 different movies every week. So Stephanie and our friend Anjay and I and Jill, we all went to see The Shining on Sunday. It was pretty awesome watching on the big screen. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I'd kind of forgotten how slow that movie moves, but I really enjoyed checking it out. It's our friend Jill's favorite movie, it turns out. The soundtrack in it is really crazy too. I kind of had forgotten how wild the music is.
It's a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts off with Wendy Carlos doing kind of and I'm trying and forgive me for my faulty memory here, but I believe it's the final Dies Irae part of the Symphonie Fantastique, which is the approach to hell. But yeah, the beginning use of that with the kind of the sound of the screaming kind of as they're driving towards the mountain, I've always really liked. And if you're interested in that kind of thing and stuff about that movie, I always tell people, well, check out Room 237, which is possibly one of the most insanely entertaining documentaries about a movie I've ever seen. I mean, it's perfect. It goes all into kind of the theories that people on the internet have been saying about The Shining for years. Mm-hmm. All the different interpretations about the Holocaust, faking the moon landing, the plight of the Native Americans.
But it was great seeing. One thing that I thought was interesting this time is a lot of times when sometimes I fall into YouTube video holes where I'll just sit around watching a theme of videos, and I remember this year I ended up watching all these Halloween movie montages, and it was scariest scenes from horror movies, and number one is always Danny riding on his big wheel and the two little girls. But I submit that's not the most scary scene in that movie.
Oh, what do you think?
And
scene, right?
I'd go with the bathtub scene. I don't think that's actually the most scary scene with the two little girls. I think the scarier scene is when Danny's playing darts in the beginning and he just turns around and they're freaking standing there and they don't do anything and they're all kind of what makes that movie great is it's got this creepy way that it's like the bathtub scene where the lady gets out of the tub and they're just the scary thing is super far away and it's you feel like you're sort of stuck in a chair and the tape just kind of hangs on them.
The slow creep.
Yeah, and you're just trapped there watching them.
Well, that's always my preferred kind of horror movie. I mean, my and this just goes into my personal taste here. My favorite kind of horror movie is a haunted house or ghost themed movie, and especially a slow burn one that deals often with things that appear in frame and then they're not in frame. When the girls just appear and then walk out of the room.
They stand there and their placement is really off-putting. Then they kind of just look at each other and then they kind of, in synchronized motion just turn around and leave.
And it's always, that's where usually those kind of movies, they always fall apart in the last act where suddenly I think I called it when I was watching one movie, the White Room of Exposition. Once they let you in on what's going on, it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. But as long as you have, you're just, something's off. That wasn't, that toy car was not on that side of the room in that first shot, But
it was a great movie.
And again, more of that is in Room 237. So I always encourage people, watch that documentary.
They make a lot of good points in that documentary too.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, I got kind of turned off by scary movies because I really hate the jump scare where it's
me too.
Yeah, really loud noise and something just flying at you. It's not earned. It's not an earned scare. I don't think it's just hey, it's just startling.
Yeah, right. Anyone can do that. It's it's like if someone just walked behind and clapped in your ear or something like that.
It's just that's an innate fear humans have of loud noises.
Well, I mean, I think and we're going way off into some interesting territory here. I actually took a class called American Horror Literature in college. Really getting my education's worth. And one of the things we discuss is there's actually three kinds of horror. There's terror, shock, and revulsion. Yeah. So terror is when you don't know what's going on, but you're uneasy. And it can get heightened and heightened and heightened. And that's what I generally prefer in a movie. There's so much more going on. Shock is your jump scare, which, it can really get you at first, but after a while you become numb to it. The same with revulsion. Revulsion is, usually what I associate with torture porn movies or gore.
Torture porn.
And a good example of this is this past weekend I saw Lucio Fulci's film The Beyond, and I actually got to see the composer's cut where the composer Fabio Frizzi and his progressive rock band played the soundtrack to the movie as it was played. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen any Fulci films like Zombie 2 or
Zombie 2, yeah. Is that where the zombie fights the shark?
Yeah. It's also the one where the zombie pulls the woman's face into a giant wooden splinter that pierces her eye.
Yep.
And it's a great revolting effect. And he's really into eye damage.
Do you sit around during the movie going, "That's revulsion"?
Oh yeah. But in my mind,
that's tension.
Yeah.
That's terror.
And
that's kind of terror, but I'm a little revolted. I don't know how I feel.
Yeah, and you get diminishing returns because
revolted.
you have the eye damage occur 3 times in the Beyond to the point that by the time the last one, the audience is almost giggling at it. They're no longer revolted at all. You know, so. That's just my horror like kind of half-ass commentary there. I really dig the Italian movies, especially the horror movies from the 70s and early 80s. I really like the music they use. I've always liked, there's just a certain aesthetic and going along with it, like the fact that they dub all their films because they filmed them all silent to save money. It's just something I've always liked. I've always liked.
Yep. So speaking of movies with great expectations, which is Stephanie had never seen The Shining, so she's always heard it's like the greatest horror movie of all time. By the way, she liked it. She was like, it lives up to my expectations. But it was funny because she was like, she got out and she was like, did anyone ever just want to walk up to Jack Nicholson and be like, maybe take it down a notch in the beginning? Like, she's like, that scene where he's in the bar is like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's great expectations, legendary Italian directors. The movie that we picked today, that Jacob picked today, is the legendary film 8.5 by legendary director Federico Fellini.
Mm-hmm.
But before we can even launch into the movie, we got to talk about, we got to address the big
foul on the play.
Yeah, big fraudulent fucking elephant in the room. Jacob picked this movie. So if you've never listened to us before, we always play a game at the end of our episode 2, and the winner of the game gets to pick the next movie. We did a 6 Degrees of Separation game last week. Jacob won in a dramatic runoff when we selected Christopher Lee and Christopher Lambert from our hat. Jacob very confidently, and within seconds, I listened to the recording, goes, easy, Christopher Lee's and Sean Connery with Man in the Golden Gun. Well, Chad and I both realized, like 5 minutes after we recorded, that was a Roger Moore Bond movie.
That was Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Well, as people say, what is it?
So,
it's 70% appearance,
Yeah, right.
20% sound confidence, and only 10% accuracy.
You said it so confidently. I was like, man, I would be a dumbass to argue, to even try.
Like, shit, I'm not going on IMDb.
Yeah.
Now,
it kind of made me wonder if we should add a rule to future games where it's like, if we do 6 Degrees again, where it's like, whoever gets it with the fewest connections wins. But if someone on purpose just totally makes up a connection and no one catches it and calls them out, they at least get like a runoff or something. We don't have to do it this time. If you're like, Daniel Day-Lewis and Daniel Stern appeared together in Dunk Brothers, and like that's part of your link, and nobody says
Tim Daniels, directed by John Goodman.
Double D. The buddy cop movie.
It was, I honestly, I was not intentionally lying here. As many times as I've seen Man with the Golden Gun, I should have remembered that that's a Roger Moore movie. However, I can still actually make the connection with that film because Christopher Lee's in that film with Desmond Lewis, who played Q, who's then in several James Bond movies with Sean Connery, who's in Highlander with Christopher Lambert. So it's another step, but I missed
bragging.
it.
All right. So Jacob picked 8.5.
Sorry, right. He fraudulently picked 8.5.
Yeah.
But I mean, we didn't know enough at the time to call your BS. So I mean,
it's
hats
your
off
movie.
to you.
You won.
The first episode had fraud occurring. So
awesome. It fits the theme.
Yeah.
It fits the theme.
Tell us a little bit about why you picked 8.5 and a little bit about the movie.
Okay. Well, what I picked was 8.5 by Federico Fellini. It was a film from 1963. This is a movie that I'd actually seen the Criterion Collection copy of in several video rental places over the years. Well, actually only one now because there's only one in Charlotte to my knowledge. It's definitely one that's been on my list for a while. I've actually only seen one other Fellini film, and that is Amicord, which kind of touches on some themes that we'll go over later as we discuss the film. This film was, again, like I said, made in 1963. At the time that Fellini made this film, he had directed 6 full-length features and 3 shorts, so he considered it his 8.5 film.
I'm glad you brought that up. Like, I don't know, did you know that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys that if Jacob had brought it up, but yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
you guys know why it's called 8.5?
Yeah, because I was sitting there watching the movie, and probably like an hour and 45 minutes into it, I was like, when did they get to 8.5?
Yeah.
Why is it called 8.5?
Yeah, that's what it is. And
I like paused it and looked it up. I was like, "Oh shit!" Because I tried to go in as like blind as I could. So I was
Is it like Harry Potter where there's a train station 8.5?
No.
Take 8.5. I don't know.
But no, this movie, I didn't realize how meta it was going to be. That you're watching a movie about a procrastinating writer's block director that was being made by a director who really didn't know what he was doing even when he began making this film. In fact,
so did he make it while he was directing another movie?
No. He actually,
or was he inspired while he was making?
He was preparing a film about someone who couldn't complete their job. He actually did not think of the fact that the guy should be a director until they had the big kickoff party for the film.
Wow.
So in reality, like almost you could think of this movie, you're watching the making of this movie by Federico Fellini.
Yeah.
It stars Marcello Mastroianni, and I am going to apologize for butchering the Italian names and places as we go through this.
We've lost Italy now. All our
Mastroianni-
It was Italy.
Mastroianni was in several of Fellini's films. Fellini was born in 1920 in Rimini, Italy. He died in 1993. He had a very long career, very celebrated career, and he was very much into religious, earthy, kind of almost dreamy themes sometimes. He also had a lot of stuff he wanted to say about the modern world and about modern middle-class life. One of his most famous films is La Dolce Vita, which I've never seen, and who knows, we might end up watching as part of this series at some point.
I think a lot of his movies are on the list.
So
Strand or something too, right?
Yeah, there's a few of them. And if you've never seen Amicord, which is in the Criterion Collection, I definitely say watch it at some point. It's really good. It's about growing up in fascist Italy in the late 20s or early 30s. It's really good. Again, very autobiographical by this director. This film's a little hard to describe in a narrative way. Basically, you have our director Guido, who has been sent to a pretty nice spa hotel, and he is procrastinating about the making of his new science fiction film. However, at no point during the film, whenever they discuss the script, does it seem to have anything to do with a science fiction film. Despite the fact that they're building a massive rocket
base.
Right, they're building a rocket base set that's costing a lot of money, but at no point does the script that they discuss in this movie deal with rocket ships or anything.
The script isn't even written yet, right?
Yeah.
Well,
he doesn't even know what the actresses are going to be playing.
He doesn't know who his actors and actresses are going to play.
He's just got all these vague ideas.
And he has ideas that he's run through, I believe, a writer friend of his. And this is my first point here. Did you guys catch if the critic ever interacted with any other characters, or was he fake?
Well, he got hung at one point, didn't he?
Yeah, but I think that was just Guido being angry. And again,
I don't know if this is true.
I think he does. I think there's a part where the producer says something.
Okay.
He was at that party. I don't know if it's like a Brad Pitt, Tyler Durden kind of thing going on, but
yeah,
it may have just been part of the movie,
Yeah, it's again, this is a film where reality and dreams sort of flow from one to the other constantly.
Yeah.
Our director Guido is at the health spa. He has visions of a wondrous lady named Claudia, played by Claudia Cardinal, who later shows up as herself as an actress to possibly be in the movie, who he believes is going to save the project, while also she represents in the script what's going to save his main character. Other than that, it's difficult to describe. He has a lot of problems between his mistress and his wife that we'll go into.
Yeah. Let's just jump in.
Yeah.
Try to describe this movie.
Okay.
Chad, what are some things that you, what are some thoughts you had, some things you really liked about 8.5? Did you really like 8.5?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, as Jacob said, it's a really meta movie. I mean, the title itself is a meta title.
Yeah.
I mean, it's talking about itself. I mean, at watching it, it was easy to watch, I guess I would say. You know, I kind of had it on the background, I would say, but I was watching it, and like I say, I get kind of turned off sometimes by foreign movies and get more turned off by black and white movies, and this was a foreign black and white movie, and I enjoyed watching it, you know. Easy to watch. I mean, you can't talk about this movie without talking about like the visuals. That's what this movie is. It's a visual movie. I love how layered every shot is. Things in the background and things entering in the foreground.
Yeah, I remember there was one shot I really liked, and they did it again. Unfortunately, like I watched the movie a couple of weeks ago, and my notes don't make any sense. But I do remember there's a lot of cool shots where there's this like exterior kind of like party area, and the camera kind of goes down, and you see the hotel, and it's got this big like elaborate looking like entrance sign. And I remember there was like a few shots where it comes down over that, and it looks really cool.
Well, yeah, and that was actually something I was going to mention later. One of the things I really enjoyed about this movie was thinking through more modern films that have stolen or been inspired by this film. And did that shot, when they show the hotel, did that not look like the Grand Hotel Budapest?
Yeah, it did.
This movie, I see a lot of things that Wes Anderson was inspired by, things that Tim Burton liked, things that I assume David Lynch must have enjoyed as well.
Mm-hmm. Something I liked in this movie is I really liked all the dream-like stuff that went on in it. I really liked the opening, like 3 or 4 minutes where he's like stuck in this traffic jam. It kind of, I mean, I feel like it was straight up like falling down or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what it makes me think of.
I think that like perfectly represents like, the pressure that a director feels.
He's trapped. Everyone's looking
at him and not hoping or doing anything.
Yeah, and he's stuck and he can't move. And then he flies out and he's almost free. And then this motherfucker's like pulling him in on this tether. And then he's like back to earth. Like
you have to put this into reality. Stop dreaming.
I thought that was great.
Before we started, it really reminded me of Brazil.
Brazil definitely probably. Gilliam probably really liked this film.
And you know what's funny? Did you guys actually watch the Criterion DVD?
No, I watched it on Amazon.
Okay. So I actually rented the Criterion DVD, and Terry Gilliam does the intro, and he's like, I love the opening to this movie, and I've always tried to recreate it in my movies.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Chad, before we began recording, you and I were talking about how much we like the visual effect of his flight.
Yeah.
And that, you know, if someone were to make this now, they would use CGI, and it just would not look as dreamy and strange.
Yeah.
Or even wires. I mean, it'd still be practical, but still, like, even like using wires, like having it look like, I don't know how you described it before.
It was a very practical, but very very low budget effect.
Yeah, but it looked
especially
good.
when the mannequin falls into the sea. That
was a great dummy shot.
Great. It's a great dummy shot.
Yeah.
That was very like arresting too, like startling. Oh, they actually look like a real guy too. I thought that was a great effect.
So a little more about the kind of the frame of this film, which might assist in kind of understanding where we're going with a lot of this. As Guido hangs about the hotel and he interacts with various members of his production team, various actors, actresses, later his wife, his mistress both come to town. He deals with a lot of that. And then towards the end of the film, he finally accepts, because throughout the film, his dreams about his past, about women and things, they're distracting him from the film to the point that he realizes he simply cannot make the film. And that's the great, climax of the film, is that he decides not to actually make the film.
Yeah, and I was thinking while I was watching it, are there many other movies where, like, the positive ending is the guy gives up, kind of like that? Because I feel like if this was, like, a modern Hollywood movie, he'd be like, all right, we're going to, roll our sleeves up, and we're going to make this fucking thing. And then this movie, it's like, nah, I can't do it.
I'm not doing it.
It's
Instead,
wrecking
I'm
my
working-
life. I gotta go back
He
and
just freed himself, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it
work on
was.
myself.
I really like this whole thing was just very symbolic. I guess
Yeah.
you could say. Like something that I noticed was like the actresses when they were trying to talk to him and kind of lobby to get in his new movie. All they said was the word "I" like all the time. They just kept talking about
Yeah.
themselves. Very vain people.
yeah,
The screenwriter you guys described, he always has his head in the script. He's not thinking
Yeah.
about much else except what he's writing. Producer's very bullying and just very pushing things around, getting
Yeah.
stuff done. It's just very symbolic. I felt like, and he himself, he kind of. So I mean, he's obviously like the hero of the movie, and you can tell like he gets very inspired by things. Like he's sitting there in that line. I forget where it was, but in the spa, there's like a line to get water or something.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
he sees
mineral
this,
water.
and there's all this just stuff happening in the background. All he sees is this beautiful woman walking, and he just focuses in on that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
That's what a director does. They pull beauty, and they're able to like capture beauty. I guess you could say.
yeah.
So it like really represents like the different parts of the movie. I
Yeah.
guess you could say.
Back on the surrealism thing, one thing I kind of liked in it is that struck me that I don't feel like I see in too many movies, and I wonder if this was one of the first that really kind of pulled this off, where it's like there's not really much of a line between the like actual narrative structure and the sort of like fantasy dream world where it's like what's going on in his mind, because you'd have like a scene going on like his mistress shows up and then his like wife and her best friend are there and they're kind of like bitching him out, then it just sort of like instantly is in this like fantasy he's having about I guess where he sees himself towards women and like
He wants all his women to get along while at the
Yeah.
same time take care of him like
Yeah.
he was a small child almost.
Yeah, there's a few things like that where something will go on, like he goes to meet the cardinal, but then it goes into this sort of odd, like dreamlike fantasy. Are there other movies you can think of like that where?
I've seen some do that, but they
Brazil?
definitely are.
Yeah.
they definitely are inspired by this film. But yeah, the scene, especially when he's dealing with the cardinal, and he happens to see kind of a worker woman walking, and it begins to remind him as a child of his encounter.
Saragina.
Yeah, his encounter with Saragina, the prostitute on the beach.
One of the
His,
weirdest scenes I've ever seen. But
Yeah.
Well, what I thought was interesting, Saragina has very distinctive eyebrows and makeup, which almost look exactly like when he's with his mistress and attempting to give her like eyebrows.
Yep.
yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing that.
Which-
Yeah.
What the heck's he doing?
That's something I really caught.
And he
on
wanted her to
the
look
second
like she was
watch.
he wanted her to look like she was trashy.
right,
Yeah.
And he directs her in her like weird fantasy role play too. Like,
which goes into and this is something I've read in a few books that people tend to even when they're old they're still latched on to their first what they first found attractive in a woman, which
Yep.
him as a child dancing the Roomba with a prostitute on the beach and then getting punished by the church for it, his
Yeah.
church school.
and he kind of it's like he learns this like lesson about shame, associating it with like his lust for women, and then there's also this whole thing going on in his dreams about like disappointing his mother and father. I think too. Like I
Yeah.
remember that's
Yes.
like when he has the first scene with his mistress. Then he has this like surreal dream sequence where they're kind of out in this like wasteland looking area, and his mother's there.
Okay, yeah, I kind of saw like all those fantasy sequences as kind of like showing his psyche and like,
Yeah, his
Well-
disappointed father. I think he's kind of dressed almost like a priest.
Yeah.
Is it implied that he was like maybe in something like they wanted him to be in the
It
church,
makes me-
and
it
then
makes- he definitely was at a religious school. I'm
yeah,
not
and
sure
then
if
he
was
then he
at-
went into the profane world of
Yeah, that's what it makes me think of. He definitely has some issues with the Catholic Church. One of the big elements in the movie is that he eventually, and I believe this isn't a dream, where he encounters the cardinal at the bathhouse at the spa. And he's asking the cardinal questions, trying to find something to make himself feel better about his life. And the cardinal only talks about how there's only
a bird or something.
you're only going to find peace within the church. You're only
Right.
going to find this through submission to the church, which he doesn't seem to agree with. He's not very interested in hearing at that point. I really like the differences between the way he treats women, such as that his mistress Clara comes off like a child who he takes care of, while his wife comes off almost like a mother figure to him. And in his harem dream, after he's whipped his harem back into shape, his wife goes back to cleaning up the childhood home and taking care of him.
And in that wasteland scene in the beginning, his mother gives him a kiss and then turns into his wife. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting symbolism there. One note about Federico Fellini. Fellini was very much inspired by the psychologist Carl Jung, who was a disciple of Sigmund Freud, but kind of went off the deep end with these ideas of archetypes and a common subconscious and things like that. So you see some Freudian elements in these dreams, but also not as much of Carl Jung's New Age ideas, but definitely some interesting points there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything... One of the segments we talked about with The Rock, I guess we'll bring up now, is there anything that you didn't like about 8.5? Does anyone have the balls to criticize 8.5?
To take on the big one?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not... I mean, if you're looking for a plot-heavy movie, this isn't it. I mean, this isn't like, Usual Suspects or like,
It's more of a character study, almost.
Yeah, it's almost just like a giant metaphor for what it's like to make a movie. Yeah. And I mean, it does it really well. Yeah. And it has really awesome visuals. Yep. Is it a movie...
Is it for everyone? Probably not.
Is it for everyone? Is it for any time? No. I mean, this isn't our movie. This is not a... Mm-hmm. Let's sit back with the family and watch a guy lose his mind make a movie.
Does everyone want to get drunk and watch 8.5 tonight, bros?
You guys want to play the 8.5 drinking game?
Yeah.
Every
time somebody comes up and asks him a question, Jesus Christ.
I have a hard time thinking of things I didn't like because I keep thinking of things I like the fact that they're smoking around the doctors.
And they're smoking in the spa when they're in the steam room.
Yeah, they are, smoking in the steam room.
That'd be a great like Jacob's Jazz album.
Yeah, that would. That'd be
Jacob Haynes Experience, smoking in the steam room.
I mean, I love any movie where Claudia Cardinal shows up or Barbara Steele shows up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're great. Barbara Steele's playing a character that looks like she belongs in a Wes Anderson film.
Was she his buddy Mario's mistress?
That's right.
Okay.
And he's not being racist. That is the character's name.
Yeah.
She plays Gloria.
I like the scene where like there's this kind of weird sort of surrealish scene towards the beginning where it's like it comes in and it's night and there's all these old people and they're all sort of like swaying and slow dancing and then she's out there doing this crazy like swing. And then his buddy Mario. Yeah. I think it's kind of highlighting like kind of the absurdity of like, the older guy in a midlife crisis. He's like sweating his ass off trying to keep up with her.
I really like that scene. I watched that scene a couple times. And you know what that scene reminded me of to bring up more influences is Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. Definitely.
That dance that she's doing and it kind of cuts to him and he's got this weird look on his face.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of feel like Quentin Tarantino was sitting there with Lawrence Bender and they're like, dude, a fucking dancing scene in the middle of Pulp Fiction? He's like, hey, it was an 8.5.
Yeah, right.
So, I want to piggyback and maybe talk about this a little more. Jason just mentioned sweaty old guys in their midlife crises. Could you say this film is kind of the same thing? I mean, in the movie, Guido is, I'm thinking 42, 43
years totally.
old.
It's totally what it's showing.
Fellini would have been the same age at this point.
Yeah. There's a lot of autobiographical stuff. He's commenting on a lot of what's going on in his own life.
But yeah, I mean, that seems to be what's going on with Guido, is that he's having his midlife crisis. He's not happy with his mistress and his wife and his film and his career.
Yeah. The problem is it's just everything's built up to this crazy tense point where it's just like it's all falling apart.
All the pressure he's feeling. Yeah. That's what the movie opens with.
So what do you think the cure is he's getting? Or like what's he there for?
What, the spa treatment?
Yeah. What do you think's wrong?
Probably just to decompress. He
probably told I think he's supposed to be there to relax, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to go to this resort," and then so then everyone just shows up. Like he can't. Like that's a big part of this movie is like I don't think he ever gets like 1 second where somebody's not just like on his case about something. Like he's like constantly, what are you going to do? Wait, blah, blah, blah. You got to make a decision here. Like everywhere he goes.
Yeah, he's almost he's happy when he thinks his mistress missed the train there. And then she appears. And a scene that really makes me think of the scene in Young Frankenstein when Madeline Kahn is wishing him off on his train ride to Transylvania. Yeah. And she's dressed almost exactly like Clara in this movie.
Yeah.
With the ridiculous furry hats and collars and acting. And so there's another scene that we found in another movie. That's like this movie's constantly, appearing in other places. Like the beginning traffic jam scene was used in the REM video for.
Oh, Everybody Hurts? Yeah.
They just fly off,
Right. So, yeah, the Criterion... One thing Chad and I were talking about is the Criterion Collection is known for their graphic design. I'm going to have to pull it up on my phone because I had it up and I lost it. But, we were kind of thinking about, So, for everyone who's kind of not really checked out the DVD box art for the Criterion Collection, they're really well known for their really awesome graphic design. There's even, sites where people make fake graphic design covers for movies that aren't in the Criterion Collection.
And they're all great.
Yeah, Gleaming the Cube and stuff. I remember the Shining one I saw was really good, the Chud one. So anyway, we were just thinking the box art for 8.5, what were they kind of representing with that? I didn't know if Chad, if you had any thoughts or if anyone did.
Hey, it looks like Tony Bourdain in a suit.
Yeah. It mimics the visual style of the movie, where there's something in the foreground, something in the background.
Yeah, and his brow all crinkled up. He's sort of compressed, and it looks kind of claustrophobic on him, and you see all this people. It's almost like people are descending on him in the background.
It looks like he's making the sound.
Yeah.
I don't know, like he just had too much.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Anyone have any? Jacob, you thinking anything?
For the visual, cover they gave. I mean, I don't have too many thoughts on it other than this movie's just gorgeously shot. It's a bunch of gorgeous Europeans,
Yeah.
in really cool suits.
Mm-hmm.
This movie definitely made me look at the crap clothes I lay around the house watching movies in, and how these people are dressed.
Right. I'm not Italian at all.
That makes me think of something I wanted to bring
I'm like
up.
the Italian stereotype where I'm going to be wearing tracksuits.
But,
lots of those in Sopranos.
did you notice the way things looked in this movie? This movie was made in 1962, 63. But the way that buildings look and the way that everything looks so much older. Was Italy that much poorer than the United? I guess it was.
Well, they had recently been through the war, right?
Yeah, they'd been through the war within 20. But wow,
kind of
it was
rebuilding.
amazing, when you see the the light switches or those really ancient ones with the exposed wires, and it's just really, just it looks like a vanished world, and it's really nice. I mean, I've been to Rome one time. Nothing really looked like that there, but I just enjoyed seeing what Italy looked like at that time, and the way the film was shot and what people were interested in. Yeah. Oh, and smoking in front of doctors. That's so cool.
There's a lot of smoking. All right, well, I guess at this point we'll get into, would we watch 8.5 again? So the last time I think I did this last, so I'll start first. Yes, I would watch 8.5 again. It seems like a movie with a lot of layers. I don't see myself watching it all the time, but I definitely could see myself going back, checking it out again. While I've been sitting here, Jacob's been pointing out stuff that I didn't really think about while I was watching it. So I think there's a lot you could gain by just going back and rewatching it every now and then.
This is Jacob, I definitely rewatch it. I've seen it twice now. There's stuff I picked up on the second. I imagine I'll pick up more stuff on the third. One thing that you might want to look out for, I honestly think his mistress is one of the people staring at him during the traffic scene. I think that there's characters from the movie in the traffic scene that you don't recognize at that point.
I can see that.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be cool. I'd like to check it out. I wanted to watch it twice before doing this, and then I just never had time to go back. And
I only got through it once, and then I tried watching it again. I only got about halfway.
yeah, but I
So
really
would you-
like this movie.
would you watch it again, or?
Probably not voluntarily. If it was on, I liked it. I don't think it really spoke to me a whole lot. Some pretty cool visuals.
Yeah.
Nothing I really reacted to emotionally, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice. I've seen it. I don't think I need to see it again.
Yeah. But would you recommend it to other people?
I would recommend it to some people. My dad, whose favorite movie is Contact and Jurassic Park, probably not.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it to certain people who like our films and they like photography, and so I probably would. It wouldn't be a hearty recommendation. I'd say it was good. So yeah, I guess so.
Okay. How about you?
Oh, I definitely recommend it to anybody who likes things like Woody Allen films. Speaking of which, another, if you've ever seen his film Love and Death, where he dances at the end, I know there's a lot of Bergman stuff in that film, but something about it makes me think of the final dance scene in this film.
Yeah. I'm starting to think you're not a film fraud. I think you've seen movies.
I've seen. I used to watch a lot of Bravo back when they showed good movies.
Okay, back before it became the Real Housewives channel.
Yeah, back when it was all Kurosawa movies all the time.
Yeah, I definitely recommend this movie. Like you'd say though, you got to pick your audience. I guess you're recommending it to. If it's like our friend Luigi, who I hope is in some future episodes, I don't think I'd recommend it to him. His favorite movie is The Rock. I wouldn't. He probably wouldn't. He probably wouldn't get into it. If it's just somebody who likes the Transformers movies or something, like our buddy, Ben, he likes the comic book movies. He doesn't really get into the artsy stuff as much. I wouldn't, he might not get that into it. But just about anyone who I think just has any interest in film as an art form, I think I would. Something I was thinking about while I was watching this movie that maybe I'm just not connecting other current movies well enough, but I just don't think you get movies like this anymore where the director is like just making a real personal statement through like the symbols and the imagery, and he's really like reflecting a lot of his own experiences. Like, I don't think this movie, I'm kind of skipping ahead to what I would say to this question. I guess I'll get to you guys, but I don't think this movie has like a theme or a message. It's just an expression of himself and his life and where he is, and he's sort of making a statement about the pitfalls of getting involved in the creative process and all of this stuff, and so I just don't know if you really see these movies making such a personal statement anymore like this one. And so I just recommend it to anyone on that front. I mean, that's like filmmaking as an
art. It was almost like therapy for him. He just had to get something out. Like, I'm so fed up. I hate making movies. And he had to
honestly have nothing I could add to that. You guys captured both of what I thought about. It's a personal statement. It seems almost therapeutic to the director.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few themes in there about, like, I guess contemporary Italian life at the time.
Yeah.
Like when they
religion.
The weird, the conflict between their traditional religious kind of society and government versus like modern life. I can't say modernity.
Yeah,
modernity.
It's not like maternity.
Yeah.
But yeah, we go back to Mama here. We go back to Mama on this movie a lot.
It always goes back to Mama.
Well,
it's like a cut for a musical break.
Yeah.
There was a quote I thought in the movie that I kind of felt like summed up the theme of the movie, or I guess like what his aims were and like what was bothering him so much. I thought I'd read it. So this is kind of like towards that, probably like the 5/6 mark where they go and visit that giant gaudy set.
Yeah,
and he's kind of sitting there with his hands between his head, or his head between his hands. He's just sitting there. I forget who was with one of the women. He says, I thought my ideas were so clear. I wanted to make an honest film. No lies whatsoever. I thought I had something simple to say, something useful to everybody. A film to help bury forever all the dead things we carry around inside.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's a director that have this inspiration inside of them that they need help getting out, and they need to hire all these different employees, I guess you could say. The writer, the actresses, he needs a producer, he needs all these different pieces, and they're all not on the same page.
Right.
And it's kind of like the death of art, I guess you could say, because he has a spark inside of him that he can't get out of himself. And that's kind of like why, it's almost like he hates making movies at one point, because it's just like it's such a death of art, I guess you could say. Like he's not able to get out his message that he wants to say.
Yeah, what I think it's interesting is following up on that. They actually there's a scene where they're watching several screen tests, and his wife walks out of the screen test realizing that most of what he's put up there, and she describes it to him, it's all a lie driven on his own point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And this combined with his final meeting in real life with Claudia Cardinal is the driving force behind him realizing, I can't make the film.
Yeah.
I need to just step away from the film.
And there's not going to be this one thing that's going to solve my problems.
That one thing can't solve your problems. Not one special woman, one special film, one special anything can't solve your problems.
Yeah.
Seems like the more people you put between what's on the screen and like what inspired you at the beginning, like it corrupts your vision more and more. Like a writer is purely just from mind to pen, and he can write down whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a purely one-to-one like art form. But like movies is so many different outlets, and
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what it was showing, that like it just his vision gets corrupted, and it just becomes something he didn't want to make, and he doesn't even know what he's making.
Yeah,
anymore.
or it doesn't get the chance to naturally like materialize. He's got like the kernel of an idea, but then everyone's like on his case to make all these decisions, and he can't really develop it naturally, and then it's just out of control, and then his personal life's out of control.
But it's paralyzed. He
Yeah.
can't move forward in anything. He can't move forward on his relations with his wife and his mistress. He can't move forward on the movie or anything involving, his career. Or he can't make any decisions on anything until finally he just decides to give it all up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So that's 8.5.
that's 8.5. Good talk, bros.
It's a bunch
I
of
guess when
8.5 minutes.
so I guess when we come back,
no Italian guys on scooters saying ciao.
No
I didn't
Italian
see
guys
any
on
of
scooters.
that.
well, there wasn't a lot of travel or urban.
The
so-
only time I heard of Federico Fellini before this, except for hearing about how good 8.5 was in a George Carlin skit where he talks about guys on their video cameras trying to act like Federico Fellini, trying to get all the best camera angles. When it's the same three ugly kids every single freaking show.
Yeah, right.
Carlin says it much better than I can.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess when we come back, we'll play a little game to determine the next movie. So hey guys, we're going to play a little game here to decide who gets to pick the next film. I am out of the running here since I got to pick 8.5. I'm just going to shout out a couple of names. Let Chad and Jason play 6 Degrees of Separation with those two names. Hopefully being more, they can still remain confident in what they say, but maybe more accurate than I
Apparently
was the
that's the key
first
to
time.
winning.
Yeah, you got to have
Winning the
confidence
next movie.
and,
Right.
a voice of command. But anyway, what I would like you to do is I would like you to connect Charles Bronson to Adam Scott.
Who?
Adam Scott.
No hints.
The dude from Parks and Rec?
That's right.
My God. Okay.
In a movie.
In movies.
Yeah, it's got to be in movies.
Bronson to Scott.
Okay. So we're going to pause it while we think this up?
Yeah, so we're going to have a little musical interlude,
Yes.
and we're going to go through and do our thing, and then
Yep. We will
we'll
be
come
right
back with whatever we come up with.
Yep.
And hey guys, we're back. And Jason and Chad might have answers here. And that's the great, 6 Degrees of Separation, trying to go from Charles Bronson to Adam Scott. I think Chad had an answer first, so let's see what he has.
So I got it in 3 movies. So I got Charles Bronson to Jason Robards in Once Upon a Time in the West.
Mm-hmm.
The valid.
I guess so. Yeah. What next?
Jason Robards to Mary Steenburgen in Parenthood.
Okay.
There you go.
Mary Steenburgen to Adam Scott and Step Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it. I don't know that first actor.
So Jason,
Once
what do
Upon a
you-
Time- Who did he play in Once Upon a Time?
Jason Robards.
Yeah.
He was the guy with the beard. He was like the guy that was kind of like good but bad too. He was helping.
He had the
out.
gang of brown coats.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he was okay.
He was helping out Harmonica or the hell.
Yeah.
his name was.
Okay.
So what did you have, Jason?
You got me. I got Bronson was in Death Wish, and I could even be wrong if it's Death Wish 1 or 2. He's in Death Wish 1 or 2 with Jeff Goldblum. Goldblum's goddamn delight in Thor 3 with Chris Hemsworth, who's in Cabin in the Woods with Richard Jenkins, who's in Step Brothers with Adam
Okay.
Scott.
All right. So Chad's the winner.
You are winner.
But before we let him give his suggestion for next time, though, and I actually checked to make sure I was not simply doing a confidence and loudness of voice answer, but you can actually do this in 2 films, 2 very big franchise movies.
Charles Bronson is in Death Wish 3 with Marina Sirtis, who's in Star Trek First Contact with Adam Scott.
Oh, Adam Scott's in First Contact?
Yes, he's on the bridge of the Defiant.
Oh, wow. I was thinking about her because I was going. I'd sat around for the longest time because I know
He's maybe
Danny
on the
Trejo's in
Defiant.
Death Wish 4. So I kept being like, there's got to be some like Danny Trejo, Will Ferrell
There's gotta be a Trejo
connection.
I was thinking Tropic Thunder for a second.
I still want to try and figure out how to go from Claudia Cardinal to Pee Wee Herman, but that's for another day. I'll figure that out at some point. But yeah, Adam Scott is in Star Trek First Contact. There used to be a really good, and this is some seriously nerdy trivia, there used to be a really good commentator on the Onion AV Club for Parks and Recs episodes where he used that as his picture, and he described every episode of Parks and Rec as if it was the Starship Enterprise, which was pretty good. It was fan fiction by Ben Wyatt. Anyway.
All right, awesome work, Chad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob, for bringing Charles Bronson into Film Frauds.
Yep, you did say Charles Bronson earlier, and I should have taken that hint.
Yeah. All right.
I gotta admit, when you said Charles Bronson, mine went, whoop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What movie are we looking at?
So, for next time, gentlemen, I propose we watch 1973 French animated film, Fantastic Planet.
Oh,
Far out.
awesome.
On a faraway planet where blue giants rule, oppressed humanoids rebel against their machine-like leaders. And I watched the trailer for this, and it kind of looks like it inspired Terry Gilliam's art style. So it's kind of like that.
We'll
cut
have to
out,
check it out.
animation style.
All right. Do you want to try and make a pass at saying the French title?
Oh my god, what is it? La Planète Sauvage.
Far out.
All right.
All right.
Fantastic Planet. 1973.
1973, and on Amazon it says nothing else has ever looked or felt like director René Laloux's animated marvel Fantastic Planet, a politically minded and visually inventive work of science fiction.
I'm glad you brought it up because I haven't really. That's like a phenomenal pick because I haven't really checked, obviously, but I was thinking, like, right before we recorded, I was like, what animated movies are on the Criterion Collection? Because I think I was driving home and I was like, Akira is like a movie that could be on the Criterion
Please
Collection.
tell me Heavy
I think it
Metal's
is.
on there.
I think Akira is.
Yeah, because I was listening to that music while I was driving in traffic. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Akira should be on the collection. And I was like, are there any animated Criterion movies?
I had
have
no
to look.
idea. I was just looking at the list at work one day, and I was like, "Oh, what titles sound cool? Let's go deep." Because I was always looking at like the 1990s, like all the newer ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's go deep in the 1970s, and I saw Fantastic Planet. I was like, oh, that looks pretty neat.
Far out.
The movie I'm going to pick eventually is a 90s movie. So,
Oh.
Yeah, my no, I guess my second pick was a 70s movie too, but it's a well-known movie. It's not like this is coming from the cult classic seller or anything.
cool.
Well, guys, join us next time when we talk about...
Fantastic Planet.
Yep. Here with Film Frauds. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.